Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 907. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today is March 18th, 2025.
All right, welcome to another episode of the great show called Anglican Unscripted, where we cover a whole bunch of different topics throughout the week. News items we want to read about, religious items we want to need to read about, politics, whatever, George and I fancy, because this is our favorite happy place. George and I get to sit down for an hour before the show and talk about life and family and just work on our friendship. And then we said, let's talk about some news. What do you want to talk about? Well, here's some stories I got. And boy, we got some good stories for you this week. But before we get there, I want you to click that. It's amazing how they have iconed my thumb as the like button. Just go there and click that on YouTube or Facebook, and it tells the algorithms that we're a good show and that you enjoy us and you want to share us. If you've not gotten to the comment section, please go to the comment section. Many comments on my last episode of Unscripted, where I did an interview with Calvin Robinson. A lot of interesting comments indeed. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, if you're not subscribed, click that red rectangle, and that pops the bell. Click the bell, and you will be instantly notified, in theory, every time I post a new episode of Anglican Unscripted. And share this with your family and friends. George, how you doing this week?
Just wonderful, busy time. I've got a class tonight for Lent. We had a St. Patrick's Day dinner on Saturday. I've discovered a funny phenomenon in our church. We've had activities, 2 or 3 activities a week, including Sunday worship, for the last month and a half or so. And attendance is down on Sunday. And I've been trying to figure out, well, what's going on? People, if they come on Saturday night to St. Patrick's Day dinner, they don't come on Sunday morning.
They feel they're covered. They're covered, yeah.
And so we were in an odd position where we have a lot of fellowship, a lot of activities, a lot of wonderful things taking place, presentations, talks. But then people, okay, I went to a 3-hour thing on Saturday morning. I don't need to go Sunday morning. Maybe I haven't been able to get people to break out of this once a week mindset for church.
Well, no, there's truth to that, and there's a rhythm to attendance as well. I go to a church where you can tell that there's a rhythm because there's large families, and you can tell somebody got up in a large family and was sick because that large family didn't show up that week, and that's just part of the rhythm. And because there's a homeschool group with the church I attend, it's not long before that sickness has taken hold of a different family. And so you're missing one family one week, and then the next week you're missing another family because somebody's got the sniffles, cold, or fever. And that's just kind of the maze of the rhythm of attendance. Jill and I try to attend all the time, but we didn't. When we were raising our kids, it was very difficult to attend weekly. And we would call ourselves good church attenders, but you get up with 3 kids and you never know, George. You never know. However, You don't have a lot of kids in your church. What's the excuse?
Well, right now, the Sunday school fell in half the last few weeks because baseball season started, and little leagues for girls, for boys, and softball for girls, and our local athletic leagues meet on Sunday morning now. So I politely say your child has a 1 in 10 million chance to become a pro baseball player, but there's 100% chance that they're either going to go to heaven or hell. So which do you need to work on? Well, people don't want to know that. They think their child is the next Willie Mays or Hank Aaron or whatever it is.
Yeah, I raised 3 kids. They all had potential, George. But that potential seems to fade as time goes by. Let's move on to our stories. There was a GAFCON conference in Plano, Texas, at the famous Plano Church, which is still the pro-cathedral of the ACNA. I had an interview once with Paul Donison from the cathedral, and that went really well. Let's see. Now, let's just talk a little bit about GAFCON and the Global South, because we learned a couple years ago that there was going to be an internal change, that GAFCON had always been the politically active of the two groups, that they were there to help change the Anglican Communion from within, that they were going to be aggressive in pursuing the Archbishop of Canterbury and trying to fix the formularies of the Anglican Communion. And right after GAFCON 4, was it 3, 4? 4. Yes. Phil Ashey put out a paper saying that they've decided to do things differently, that the Global South itself would be the institute that would try to affect change in the Anglican Communion, and that GAFCON itself would just work on evangelism and training. So when I read parts of their statement for the Plano statement, I'm going, okay, all right, it's not the we're at war statements of the past, and it's more of like, well, we're a church institute, and we're going to do church.
What's happening is there's a vacuum out of Canterbury.
Right. Big vacuum.
Neither the Global South nor GAFCON are seeking to fill it.
Mm-hmm.
GAFCON's statement and the coverage from their meeting in Plano had very poor readership on Anglican Inc. Yeah. And I don't want to say that it doesn't matter unless it gets 1,000 views, each hour on Anglican Inc. I'm not saying that, but people weren't looking for what was going on. People weren't discussing what was going on. It was just another church meeting. Oh, isn't that nice? Or isn't that a pretty picture? There is no buzz about GAFCON anymore. And maybe that's deliberate. Maybe GAFCON has moved away from having a buzz to basically building relationships among new bishops. But the communication strategy, the strategy both for the Global South and GAFCON to basically have a footprint in the Anglican world is missing. Mm-hmm. Then they're not. If that is their desire to withdraw and to basically be another parachurch group among many parachurch groups, then they're pursuing a good project. In other words, they're pursuing more. Alpha has a very good communication strategy that just talks about what Alpha does. They don't really get involved or work about anything else. GAFCON and the Global South have followed an Alpha approach, which is one among many. But does the Global South or GAFCON want to be one among many, or do they want to take a leadership in the communion as a whole? And part of the difficulty has been, first, the primates. We're a group of primates. Well, primates change every 2 or 3 years. We're a group of bishops. Well, bishops can only do so much. The lay people, the clergy, are vitally important, both for financial purposes, but as well as to get a buy-in into what you're trying to get done. And GAFCON and the Global South neither really have been successful in getting a buy-in from the wider Anglican world. Mm-hmm. It's irrelevant to people. And though the leaders of these groups may think they're relevant, may think that they've got a deep work and plan to be done that will bring light and joy, they haven't done a good job in telling people why they should think this. Yeah,
the communication of what we're doing next certainly wasn't relevant in the Plano statement they put out, it didn't cause a groundswell of, hey, we want to get on board to this. I don't know. Certainly, they do great statements and communiques coming out of GAFCON conferences, and maybe they don't have to put that type of earnest here. This is just a get-together amongst leadership, and it serves another purpose than it does for leading the church. So
they've announced that the next big conference is going to be in Nigeria in 2026. Well, I think that's going to be a tough one. because Nigeria is not a safe place for Westerners to go right now.
Yeah, I mean, we attend
the Nigerian church. Yeah. The Nigerian church may want to show off its strengths, whatnot, but
You and I went into Kenya shortly after the mall massacre for GAFCON 2. And I get it that you want to be careful about all this, and I'm sure that they can have a plan B in backup, but I'm glad to have will it be called GAFCON 5? Is that what they're doing with that?
Yeah. But here's the point. We're only a year out from it, and there's no sense of buzz. There's no sense of, well, so what? There's no sense of, I've got to be there. There's no sense of, this is going to change things. There's none of that present at the time. And if we look at the past GAFCONs, there were 2 or 3 year buildups to these gatherings.
Now, part of the problem could be just Kevin and George expecting the old GAFCON. Yeah, I remember going to GAFCON 1. I remember the buzz and the excitement and the worship and the something new was happening. And I remember going to GAFCON 2 and seeing people saying something happened and we're continuing that project because there's still a lack of leadership in the Anglican Communion. GAFCON 3, we're mature now. We've created a province. We're working to get into the shores of England. We've matured. So we'll have to see what happens. The lack of what I'm reading in the Plano statement could just be Kevin and George. Not likely at all, but it could be. Let's put that out there. But let's see. Story 2, China, TikTok. Software. We've talked about TikTok in the past, and certainly social media has changed who we are as people in every country around the world. Having phones and things in front of our faces, when you go and you can't go anywhere now and look at teenagers and then just not doing this all the time. This is all they do, and they're doing that because they reading Instagram and seeing pictures on Facebook. Well, young kids don't do Facebook anymore. I'm telling this to all you old people out there. Young kids do Instagram, and they do a little bit of Twitter. They do a little bit of Blue Sky, and they do a lot of TikTok. TikTok's in because the algorithm for TikTok is amazing. It can hone into exactly who you are as an individual and what content you want to be fed within 20 minutes. No, there's no software in the world that can do that. And China has really put together a great platform in that. Great in the fact that it has power over you. Because you know what? You can't put it down, George. I put it down for a couple, so I got to do it again and again. Actually, this is my stock portfolio. Oh, I don't want to look at that. Oh, so...
TikTok has been a big political controversy in the United States. The Trump administration is trying to force the sale of TikTok from Chinese to American ownership because of its national security implications. And what we've seen in the past is TikTok's algorithms have, during the Black Lives Matter, they ginned up the pro-Black Lives and pro-police comments and narratives so as to set America on each other. In other words, they deliberately followed, so claims the FBI, of manipulation to sort of inflame the situation around Black Lives Matter. We saw this around the October 7th attacks on Israel. The pro-Palestinian narrative was ramped up out of nowhere, as was the counter-narrative, and people were being fed opposite sides so that they would respond hysterically, nastily, viciously to each other. Now, according to the American Spectator magazine, there is a new campaign which is being focused on pitting postmodern Americans against Christian Americans, where all of a sudden TikTok has just been filled with religious imagery, languages, Jesus talking some very fundamentalist views are being placed on people's feeds, whereas they weren't there before. And this is causing a back and forth, very vicious, nasty back and forth between non-secular Americans and religious Americans. And so the argument is, and this is being put out by the FBI, which is the source of the American Spectator's article, that China is trying to inflame Americans along religious and faith lines. And it's not that not religious versus non-religious, but they're putting on, say, somebody in their late 20s, early 30s who's a moderate secular who may have a spirituality. They're putting on their feed stuff akin to, the God hates fag stuff that one group, that Baptist church, whatever his name was, they're putting that on there. They're putting that on there. That's kidding it. And so those kids, young adults, respond viciously to that nastiness. And this gets Christians responding, no, not Christianity is all like that. Or they respond to, it's trying to pour gasoline on a cultural problem in the United States, which is the gap between the secular and the religious.
Well, hold on. There's multiple gaps here in America. We're a powder keg of many nations, and it's very easy to light the wick of that powder keg. It's happened many times in the past, and in this instance, it's certainly based on religiosity and trying to divide that world. But if you did this in any other country besides America, it wouldn't work. If you tried to divide the Chinese over religion, no, not going to happen. If you tried to divide the Chinese over Black Lives Matter, not going to happen. But here in America, you light that little wick, and you're going to cause absolute chaos. And I think the Chinese and the algorithm have found magic for the CCP.
Yeah, their goal is to destabilize American society so that America is not able to act decisively in world affairs, so that Donald Trump has to put out domestic fires rather than deal with the threats that come from overseas. And the fight between Christians and non-Christians, it's sort of funny because in China, Christianity is heavily under the thumb of the government. We've had several reports over the past few years where the Ten Commandments are taken down from the walls of churches and replaced with statements from Chairman Xi. There's a textbook about Christianity where John's Gospel with a woman caught in adultery, that story is changed where Jesus throws the first stone. Instead of, seriously, they changed the Bible to have the point of Jesus not being,
forgiving.
He is presented in the scriptures, not being forgiving. So Christianity is heavily manipulated, heavily regulated in China. But then they go into the American context, and they're opening up the sluice gates and putting the worst of both sides at each other's throat, so that the worst viral statements or most viral craziness gets out there, and people respond by thinking, oh God, these horrible people. And that breaks apart our fragile society even further.
Yeah, it does. But I don't see a fix. Even if we bought the software and moved it here to America, the algorithm is still there. The thing that sells TikTok and makes kids addicted to that type of information and being fed what they want doesn't go away unless you shut TikTok off. Now, I remember when the October 7th activities happened, or the January 6th, you just named the big events in the last 8 years. And I remember talking to my kids, and they would say something that was completely incorrect. I go, where did you hear that? Well, this person I follow on TikTok with 5 million followers said this, and it's got to be true. And I'm like, well, no, it's not true. And here's the proof. And I would provide a counterpoint to, I would provide factual evidence that what this TikTok person said wasn't true. And guess what, George? my factual historic evidence wasn't good enough. You know why? Because the TikToker said, don't believe anything your parents say. Mm-hmm. What a power! You know, opium of the masses is TikTok now. It's not the TV. It's, you know, it's completely changed. So that's something to keep your eyes on. I am an IT professional. If you have TikTok on your phone, uninstall it. Do yourself a favor. It follows you. It knows what you're doing. It follows all the other apps you use. The Chinese government know more about you than almost the Lord above. And I don't think you want the Chinese to know that much about you. I don't think you want God to know that much about you, but still.
And may I say, uninstall the Temu app.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, don't buy from Temu. Yeah.
That is also a Chinese government spy app.
Yeah.
You may get cheap crap, you know, that as soon as you arrive, you go, why did I spend $10 on this? But now the Chinese know everything about you.
Yeah.
Because of that app.
What a crazy world we live in. Okay, let's do some ACNA news. We got a letter put out from Steve Wood, the new presiding bishop, a primate of the ACNA, and he is revamping the staff and changing things. And we knew this kind of early on because we got a letter from our good friend, former director of communications from the ACNA saying, listen, I'm moving on. They're revamping the ACNA and they no longer lead me. I'm going to start a business here in Ohio. And it's been fun, and it has been fun. He's certainly a great press officer, but not bewildered by changes because I am a business owner. I change things all the time. Just ask my poor employees. But it shows a more domestic-centric ACNA than under Archbishop Duncan and Archbishop Foley.
Yeah, Steve Wood is putting his imprint on the ACNA organization, and there's some changes over Bob Duncan and Foley Beach's worldview mindset. Communications is being downgraded. Not that they're still going to do communications, but the role of the communications officer is not somebody close to the Archbishop, but somebody one or two levels down. Their international arm is basically gone. There will be people tasked with this, but again, they are not at the top of the food chain. We've got ACNA is reinventing itself and its staffing as another parachurch organization, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's I support that.
But the ACNA standing toe to toe with Justin Welby, Foley Beach standing toe to toe in Canterbury Cathedral with Justin Welby. That's the past. It's
the past because it doesn't matter anymore. We're no longer seeking the approval of the Archbishop of Canterbury. The Archbishop of Canterbury is no longer having a primates gathering, hoping that the primates will make happy and agree with him. I remember interviewing Archbishop Foley right after the primates gathering, where they came out, and once again, the Episcopal Church was going to be held accountable for its actions in the Anglican Church in Canada, and Justin Welby said, "I will take care of it. I'll make sure that the the Episcopal Church is held accountable, going all the way back to Gene Robinson." Oh, by the way, guess who's going to be speaking at the wedding? Okay, guess who's going to be at the wedding? Oh, yeah, Michael Curry will be at the wedding. So, I think the days of desiring a relationship at all with the Church of England and the See of Canterbury are gone. And this is evident in the Plano statement from GAFCON and in the restructuring from the ACNA.
From my perspective, I think you're absolutely right, Kevin. The ACNA is becoming another American Protestant denomination. It's not, early on, when we were at the St. Vincent's Cathedral for the Anglican Communion Network or whatever it was, I forget it was, before the ACNA was built, there was a
Yep.
very
ACN.
strong ACN, very strong sense and desire that we are part of an international church. And we just have to get all the ducks in a row and make sure, this new organization is part of the fold. Going on how many years ago? 15 years ago? 20 years ago?
Since 2005, 2004, right after Gene Robinson.
Yeah. Okay, since that point, that desire is no longer there. And the ACNA is becoming just another American Protestant denomination with historical links, but not any real sense of being part of an interchangeable, greater global denomination. This is reflected in the structures that are being set up by the ACNA. They're, I'm sure, perfectly adequate for what the current leadership wants to do, but it is a major change from where they were. And, well, it is what it is.
It is, but I also think it's a maturing. They're no longer concerned about who likes them. Yeah, it's not the freshman year in high school trying to make friends. They have certainly put themselves out there as a leading denomination within the boundaries here of North America, because they're not shrinking like all the other denominations. And they have not fallen to the wayside over DEI or over woke or the gender wars or of the queer wars. They have remained strong in that. And so this maturity can say, well, we're not worried about being popular amongst the Anglican Communion. We're worried about now working domestically to grow here in America.
But that worldview no longer makes them a Catholic church, this small c.
I didn't say that they're doing it all the way, but I'm just putting it out there that this is what I see, a mature church. So, but you are correct. It's no longer an Anglican small c Catholic.
And I wonder how long the Anglo-Catholics are going to want to stay on board, given the direction that this is taking.
I don't know. I've not seen a lot of complaints, so I don't know. Except for a few Facebook groups, but that's about it. Let's move on to our next story here. And we're going back to the Church of England. We're going back to the Smyth affair, certainly one of the travesties of this century in the Church of England. And if you've not read about Jonathan Smyth, Google it. Go to Anglican.inc. We have all the stories there. We can't revisit the whole story here. But to say, in the end, they're going to leave one person responsible. And apparently the Megan report and everything else is pointing to George Carey as being the person who's going to be holding the ball at the end of the day, George. I don't get it.
The National Safeguarding Team took the Macon review of all that had gone on with John Smyth, and they came to a political conclusion, which is, we're going to protect those in power and their friends, and we're going to persecute those whom we have persecuted in the past and those who are out of favor and power. This is the hypocrisy and a joke of the establishment, once again, on the people of the Church of England. And it's not just George saying this. The various survivors committees are saying this as well, that you're attacking the wrong people. Okay, here's the situation. The National Safeguarding Team put out a list of people who should be investigated. I think there were 10 of them. 9 of them are retired. And so there's nothing really to be done to them because they're not doing anything anyway.
Including George Carey. He's retired.
Including George Carey. He's almost 90 right now. But nothing about Justin Welby, about Steve Conway, about Joe Bailey Wells, the people who actually hid or lied or did things that destroyed people's lives by shuffling papers to prevent justice from taking place. Well,
My, we're busy today.
Okay, here's the situation. George Carey, the avenue of attack on George Carey was that he was the principal of Trinity College in Bristol, a seminary, in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
John Smyth was a part-time day student at this college. Now, Smyth was transitioning to Africa at this time, and it is suggested that he wanted to get some sort of credentials or some sort of something to put on his resume to make him look attractive to church people in Africa who didn't know any better or who didn't know about him. And in 1982, a report was written by a fellow named Rushton, and this was circulated among certain evangelical leaders that detailed all of Smyth's crimes. One evangelical leader told another evangelical leader that, oh, we showed this to George Carey. That's the only information that links George Carey to John Smyth. Somebody in a note to somebody else said, I think Carey has seen this.
Mm-hmm.
Carey doesn't remember this fellow at Trinity College, Bristol. Students at the time don't remember this guy at Trinity College, Bristol. He was a day student who drove in, drove out, and may have sat in a class or two. And why would this guy come across Carey's radar? Well, the National Safeguarding Team is taking this hearsay evidence that Carey, that they're believing this, that somebody wrote to somebody else saying, I think Carey knows, and trying to destroy George Carey's reputation once again.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing that was raised by Justin Welby in 2020 in the middle of all this investigation. And Carey lost his license to officiate. This is just, I have no respect whatsoever for safeguarding the Church of England because it is now so politicized, so corrupt, so venal, from Stephen Cottrell all the way down to the diocesan people running the shows. It's as bad as a Catholic abuse scandal in the United States was, in the cover-up and in the institutional refusal to come clean.
Yeah. And referring to our other two stories, why on earth would GAFCON want to have a relationship with the Church of England? It's destroyed itself. Why would the ACNA want a relationship with the Church of England? It's destroyed itself from within, and it's not just destroying itself. It's trying to take out leaders like George Carey. Now, George Carey has said, "Fine, I'll step back. I don't remember it. Maybe it is time to retire." And, good on him for that. But the problem is not whether or not George Carey had any memory of this. I probably have more memory of Jeffrey Dahmer, because I'm from Wisconsin, than George Carey does of Jonathan Smyth. And it's just guilty by association at that point, George. Oh, he went to your school. You were the headmaster. Oh, you're out of here. And I get it, because this is the Church of England. It makes completely sense that this is how they would do it.
It's like somebody brings a friend to Sunday school, one or two Sundays, and 30 years later said, oh, this child attended your Sunday school. You should know all about them 30 years later. Mm-hmm. Why would I, if I wasn't their teacher, or, have any connect,
But let's back up and put this in context. We're not here defending George Carey. We're here saying you're attacking the least person on the board of 10 here that you need to attack. There are people much more involved than George Carey and all this, much more, and they're walking free. Small story. I've been to Kenya for installations of bishops and consecrations, and it's a lot of fun. We'll talk about that as we get on here. But this saw a unique and different approach to how you do an installation or a consecration. When I was in Kenya for Bishop Murdoch and Bishop Atwood's consecration, it was a long affair. Long because the service is long? Yeah, it's a little longer than your average service. Not a big deal. Long because it was hundreds of people that had to go to the Eucharist, a little longer than normal, not unusual. Long because people who are not really part of the service were speaking at the pulpit? Yeah. Lots of politicians and people from town, people who knew people who knew people who knew people, were allowed to speak at this very public affair. And then that was a 3-hour affair for the Atwood Murdoch consecration. I flew to Uganda the next day for John Guernsey's consecration, and that was a 6-hour affair, because apparently this was also the town meeting that they have once a year. Was to the consecration. Everybody came in and everybody gave a speech. And at some point, I'm like, I'm going to run out of tape before they actually get to the consecration in my recorder, because I kept taping everything. And I go, this will be over soon. I got sunburn. It was just so bad, George. So having shorter consecrations is a good thing. And that's what the new Archbishop has insisted. Let's talk about that.
Well, Jackson Ole Sapit is the Archbishop of Kenya, primate, and they installed a new Bishop of Nairobi. So it wasn't a new Archbishop, but a new Bishop of Nairobi, which is the big diocese.
Okay, to people watching, we've gone through some big technical problems already today. I'm just lost in my notes, and you're lost in the notes. You've had people knocking on the door. You've had the phone ringing. We lost a whole monitor here. It's been a wonderful day of spiritual attack, and we deserve it. We know we're working in the kingdom here. We get it. On to the show, George.
Well, Jackson Ole Sapit installed a new Bishop of Nairobi. And the former deputy president, and the governor of Nairobi, and a whole bunch of politicians were there, sitting in the front few rows. And as you mentioned, Kevin, the custom in Africa is to have the politicians speak. And so, the vice president would come up and give a 20-minute speech about his policies, and then welcome the new bishop. And the next politician will come up. Jackson Ole Sapit basically said no politicians may speak from the pulpit of this cathedral or any church in Anglican Church of Kenya. We're keeping the politicians out of the pulpit. It's because the church cannot be seen to be allied with one political party versus another. There are two main parties in Kenya that are at each other's throats. Every few years we have violence during the elections where the activists from both sides try to kill each other. And in the past, meaning up until recently, up until Saturday, politicians would come to these things, give money to the new bishop, or give him a Land Rover or something, and essentially claim, okay, you Anglicans are now supporting me because I'm here and my opponent isn't. Jackson Ole Sapit said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're non-political, apolitical. We support both parties. We support neither party. And this, for the United States, this is extraordinary. You wouldn't think of having a politician come unless he sat and took Holy Communion or something. When Donald Trump and all the ex-presidents were at Jimmy Carter's funeral, Barack Obama, the only person who spoke was Joe Biden because he gave the eulogy. But that was a eulogy, not a political stump speech. Africa is not that way, and Jackson Ole Sapit's taken the first steps to break the church out of that ghetto as a tool for politicians. And I salute him for that.
I recommend this to the Archbishop of Uganda. Please adopt the same rule. And that's just the way, because so many times these events, like the consecrations or installation of a rector, is the only time the town would gather. I mean, there was a reason to have all these stump speeches and stuff like that, because we got everybody together, we rented the sound system, we got some lights here, everybody's here. We're going to do more than just a consecration. Well, it's 2025. We can move on. Most of your fan base has YouTube now. You can make a YouTube video. That's what we do here, George. Let's talk about more news. We're getting mixed messages out of Syria. We reported, I think, 4 weeks ago that there was a massacre at a Congolese church in northern Congo where 50 people were beheaded. Their heads were removed from their bodies, and it was a tragedy. It was done by terrorists in fighting, in civil war, the whole works. And I'm like, okay, how do we verify this? We need to, George and I have learned over the course of many years that you want to be verifying of stories that happen anywhere. First reports are often wrong, as we've learned the hard way. And hopefully at some point there will be some documentation or some pictures or firsthand accounts from the Congolese community of this happening. That has not occurred. The pictures that have shown up on X, Twitter, Facebook have all been old pictures from 2 or 3 years ago. And that's a problem you and I have, is we want to support, but we want to give accurate information.
Yeah, the two people who I trust the most about Congolese news are the Catholic Aid to the Church in Need. That's their development agency. And as well as Bishop Gordon, the Anglican bishop in Goma. And both of them have been on the internet, Facebook, Twitter, whatnot, saying, we have heard too about this massacre. But they've not said, yeah, this is what happened. Bishop Gordon is saying they've been picking up, there are over 3,000 bodies that have been picked up in the streets fighting in Goma. So I can report as a fact, got a first-hand witness who sees bodies being picked up and this and that. But here's Bishop Gordon saying, 75, 50 miles into the north, there's this massacre. Yeah, we heard about that too.
Yeah.
Well, what did you hear about? Well, the people originally reported it. It's not saying it didn't happen,
No.
but in this day and age, we've got to be so careful because there's so much fake news, and people put out videos that they either deliberately lie about or imply are from the story they're describing when they're not. So it's a tough one here.
It's a tough one. Now, I applaud Facebook and Twitter for recently installing software that will correct a video image or a picture that is posted to a fake story. They'll say this is an AI-generated video, has nothing to do with the story. This video was taken 3 years ago, has nothing to do with the story that's posted. And credit to Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg for going that route. It's not fact-checking as much as it is this video. The story may be true. This video isn't part of that story. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I appreciate that because we're journalists. The last thing I want to do is post inaccurate information. My opinions can be inaccurate. That's fine. But as far as what we talk about, factually, it needs to be accurate. So we are getting mixed messages out of Syria. We reported last week the Alawites and Christians were being massacred. That is true. Okay? There's no question about it. We've seen videos of the Alawites and Christians being massacred in these Syrian attacks. What we are not learning is who's attacking who. Are they being attacked or persecuted? And now we're getting reports that they're just collateral damage in the war in Syria.
Yeah, we're seeing fake videos on social media from. I saw one that shows like a teenage boy being executed. And then a few days later, that video popped up again with the Facebook, Twitter community note saying this is a 10-year-old video. Mm-hmm. So this wasn't happening from the past week. There has been massacres in western Syria, and there have been reports Christians being targeted. And we've gotten church leaders in Syria have said, no, yes, some Christians are being murdered, but we're not being targeted. And then we have other church Christian leaders saying, yes, we are being targeted. So we have people on the ground saying one thing or the other. Both are saying that Christians have died, but that the targeting is of Alawites, who were the mainstay of the al-Assad regime, previous regime. And the Alawites look like Christians, talk like Christians. You can't really tell the difference, but just by looking and, no big deal. We'll kill you too while we're at it. So the issue is we can't really say with certainty that there is a pogrom of Christians because we're getting these mixed statements. Now, it might say, well, this is hair splitting because a dead person's a dead person. A dead Christian family is a dead Christian family that's to be condemned. Yes, absolutely. But there's a difference between targeting somebody and just killing everybody and letting God sort it out, which is what the jihadists are doing.
And there's a difference between persecuting Christians and Christians dying in a war where they're being persecuted. It appears that the last story we were recording has been corrupted. It was called The Rainbow People, and you would have loved it. It has been a couple years since we've lost any footage, but we will re-record it again on Friday's show. As I previously alluded to, this episode has been marked by significant spiritual attacks. The reality is, George and I do not require additional financial support or better equipment. What we truly need is your prayers. From time to time, this ministry serves as a testing ground where God ensures our commitment to the mission and our adherence to principles we advocate. Do we practice what we preach? Today is one such occasion. I request that you uplift Anglican TV in your prayers with special focus on George and me as we manage our full-time lives to deliver news and our perspectives on critical global issues. This has been episode 907 of Anglican Unscripted.